Hello, IPX New York. How are we doing today? I am so excited to be here. I know everybody said they're so excited to be here, but I am truly excited to be here. My name is Michelle Denman. I have the privilege of being the Chief People Officer for Impact.com. This is a topic so near and dear to my heart, so much passion about wellness in the workplace, and I'm really grateful that we actually made space to be able to have this conversation today. I know you've been learning a ton. I know that there's a lot of information coming your way, innovation. You're a group I can see right now of high achievers, but let me ask you a question. How many of you feel like you've figured out, you've got nailed the balance between work and wellness? Oh my goodness, I thought there might at least be one or two that I could find after the session and get some tips. Our panel, though, of course. But what better place then for you to actually get some tips? Because like me, I'm still working on it. And I think this is a great opportunity to learn from some true innovators, thought leaders. So let me introduce our panel. So excited to have them here. To my right is Allison Watson, CEO of Modern Health, which is a partner actually in employee wellness at Impact.com. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. Next to Allison is Locke Hughes, who is a prolific content writer. She's the head of health content at Aura. Anybody get their ring? Yeah, you got, all right, we've got one over here. I'm getting mine soon, I'm super excited. And then next to Locke is Jun Yoshida. I'm sure you've heard of his company, LinkedIn. We might all be partners potentially with them. He's a senior manager of wellness programs at LinkedIn. We're gonna learn all the wonderfully innovative things that LinkedIn is doing. Ready to get started? All right, so sometimes I think the best way to set the table is for everybody to kind of come with a common understanding of the topic at hand. There's been, I think, a huge change in the definition of wellness over the years. So, lightning round for our panel. What is the definition of wellness? How do you think about wellness? Allison, start with you.
Yeah, happy to jump in, and thanks everyone for having me. Excited to be here. Good to see you all. Let's see, when I think about the definition of wellness, so I come from the mental health perspective as the founder and CEO of a mental health company. And so I really think about the integration between mind and body. And I think to achieve ultimate wellness, we really need to think about the connection between physical health and mental health. And I'll talk more about that, but that's when I think about someone who's really achieved wellness is how do we connect the mind and body.
Great, love it.
I love that definition. And I would say that wellness is so individual and so personal, and I think it's a lot of self-experimentation to figure out what works for you. You know, what foods feel good, what kind of movement or activity feels good for you, finding work you enjoy, at least most of the time, and surrounding yourself with people who really lift you up. So I think that wellness is different for everyone. You know, there's no one-size-fits-all solution, and yeah, it's a personal journey for all of us.
Yeah, I would have to agree with everything Locke says, and that's essentially how we kind of run our wellness program at LinkedIn, is we really listen to the individual. But for me, I feel like it's kind of an intersection between your physical, mental, spiritual, and also your financial well-being. And so we've developed a lot of programming around that, but there's a concept called ikigai, which is a Japanese concept, and is the Venn diagram of, you know, what you love to do, what you're good at, how you can get paid. And so there's a lot of intersections there where I think if you can find that intersection of it all, that is essentially kind of your, in a way, your purpose, or you found your purpose. And I know that gets tossed out a lot, but it allows you to be more intentional with how you approach your wellness, I feel, so.
Great, thank you. It sounds complicated. But I love the concept of ikigai as well. Really resonate with what you said, Locke, also about it being very personal and individual, and there's a thread there, I think, in all of your comments. So how then do we think about where does the accountability lie between the individual and the employer in terms of wellness in the workplace? And I'm assuming because we're all here, we recognize that there's probably a balance between those two things. So do you want to start us off? Because I feel like LinkedIn's really got a program in place.
Yeah, absolutely. I think both sides need to be held accountable. You know, approaching it from the employer side, we want to make sure that we have programs in place and developed. You know, it's not this makeshift thing. And so what we like to do typically is we really get the feedback from our employees. We participate in our employee voice survey, which is a biannual survey that goes out to every single employee at LinkedIn. We listen to their feedback, their needs, and from there we come together as a team and we go, hey, what are some quarterly things that we can do to address maybe some issues in the workplace around wellness? And so ultimately it is both accountability, and so I feel that is essentially how we run our program.
Great. Allison, anything to add to that? How does Modern Health approach it?
Yeah, and it's a really great question. And I feel like I come from kind of an interesting lens as someone who's promoting mental health in the workplace and taking care, helping employers help employees take care of themselves, specifically their mental health, while also being the founder and CEO of a company, of a business that's trying to do well, that's trying to grow, that has aggressive targets. And I feel like it really is a balance and understanding that the world has changed. The way that we operate is very different than it used to be even 10, 20, 30 years ago. We are tethered to technology in a way that we never have been before, right? Most of us sleep with our phones next to our beds plugged in. So the last thing we look at before we go to bed is the first thing we look at when we wake up. A lot of us work remotely, so we have our laptops within, 20 feet of where we sleep, right? We're tethered to technology in a way that we never have been before. And it would be impossible for us to think that this isn't having an effect on our mental health, for better or for worse, right? It's having an effect. We as humans have not been wired and actually have not created the new neural pathways to be resilient in this new world that we're all operating in. So I think the first step is for just acknowledgement of this, acknowledgement that the way that we all live in this day and age is hard, especially for most of us who are working in technology-driven workforces. And so a big role that employers can play is being vocal about that. We understand that the way in which the world operates is different, so let's give you the tools and resources to prioritize your mental health so that you can show up in the way that the world operates today and be successful. And so I think that's kind of the first step that we take in partnering with the great companies that roll out Modern Health.
That's great. So let's broaden the lens a little bit and maybe go deeper. We have people in the room today who are in leadership positions, who are line managers, who are individual contributors. So what's the actual work that you do? We'll start with you, Allison, this time, to enable to create that kind of wellness-oriented workplace.
I think for me, it starts with leading with vulnerability as a leader. I'm very vocal that I would not be sitting here today if it wasn't for my therapist, my couples therapist. I'm married to a founder CEO, so we have a crazy household. My executive coach, and I feel so fortunate that I'm in a position where I get that level of support. But I wouldn't be able to show up at work and be my best self any day of the week if it wasn't for that. And so in order for us to get employees and get each other to prioritize our mental health, we as leaders have to show up and be vocal about how we do it. If we illustrate that and role model that we let those things fall to the wayside, well, that's what everyone else is going to do. So I really am vocal about getting support myself and being vulnerable when I'm struggling.
I love that, leading from the front. So Gina, what about you? Some specifics that LinkedIn's employed?
Yeah, we have that strong foundation within the program based around the 6 wellness tenets, which are thoughts, breathing, hydration, nutrition, movement, and rest. And so my job is to really double click into each of those wellness tenets and make sure that we're producing and creating wellness opportunities for our employees. So when we think about thoughts, everything from developing a mindfulness practice or setting intentions and being very goal oriented. Breathing really goes hand in hand with that mindfulness piece. Very easy to do, but we often forget how important our breath is. Hydration. I've got my water. I look around, whereas, there's maybe a lack of it. There's a lot of good times going on. And so, we really want to make sure that water is your primary beverage. And so we've got a saying within the program, if you pollute, you must dilute. So every non-water beverage you consume, just try to match it with equal parts water. So 8-ounce cup of coffee, chase it with 8 ounces of water, and you're balanced out that day. And it is about the balancing act today. So nutrition, very critical, making sure that we allow our employees to experiment, but also give them the knowledge and the awareness around eating real foods and the benefits of them. breaking down what macronutrients are, making sure that our cafes are serving real food, letting folks know, hey, just that is the approach. Shopping around the perimeter of the grocery store where all your produce and your meats are, partnering with our internal teams, with the food team to make sure that those options are available, and you can coach yourself to cook or learn some knife skills so you can do those things. Movement, obviously very critical for both your physical and mental well-being. We have a lot of different ways we approach that. It's also one of our most popular tenets within the program. Gyms, classes, things of that nature are very popular, but a lot of app movement as well. So we have an app that we've built internally to make sure that folks are moving. And then lastly, the rest piece, which I think is probably the most important, making sure that folks are getting plenty of rest. It's not about the hours, but it's about the quality of sleep. And so we do talk about this 7 to 9 hour window, but really it comes down to how do you feel in the morning when you wake up? Checking in with yourself often, making sure that your energy levels are good. So that's how we kind of dive really deep into the program and make sure that we have those opportunities available for our employees.
Well, that's great. And I thank you for the nugget of wisdom about hydration, because that whole drink 64 ounces of water hasn't really worked for me, this whole if you pollute, dilute. And I guess everything that is not water then falls on the
easy enough, right?
Side,
right?
Yeah. Super simple. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
This is a great opportunity, I think, Locke, to ask you kind of the related question about individual accountability. So we've kind of talked about what's the employer's accountability, but what's our own individual accountability for creating a well workplace?
Yeah, definitely. I also love that, and that's going to be in my head now when you pollute, dilute. So I think at Aura, we definitely focus on the individual. We literally put the power of your health, well-being into your hands, at your fingertips. And I think there's a good balance. I think all of us as individuals inherently know what feels good to us and what doesn't feel good to us. I mean, imagine a week when you really have your diet, dialed in, and you're eating healthy foods and you're moving your body in a way that feels good and you're getting enough sleep. Like, you feel great, you feel on top of the world. And then of course there are those weeks or maybe even months where you slip a little bit, you maybe drink too much, don't sleep enough, and you don't feel your best. And I think we all inherently know our bodies, but I think a wearable like Aura can actually give you that quantifiable data that shows what you do and how it affects your body, like down to your cellular level. And also Aura provides guidance throughout the day to sort of remind you to check in with yourself throughout the day, to kind of listen to your body throughout the day. We'll send you, for example, a bedtime notification when it's time to start winding down for bed. And that's actually in accordance with your own personal chronotype, which is kind of cool, whether you're a night person or a morning person. We also send nudges during the workday to remind you to stretch your legs if you've been sitting for about 50 minutes or more. I'm curious about the app that you guys have too. And we also now have a stress feature actually that tracks your heart rate. So it'll give you a little nudge if it senses that you're being stressed throughout the day on a physiological level. And we'll even suggest breath work or meditations from within the app that you can do during the day to lower your heart rate and your stress level. So there is definitely a balance between the employer and the individual. I'm not saying you have to do it all yourself, but whether you're just tuning into your body or using a wearable like Aura, I think there's a lot of ways to kind of get to know what works for you.
That's great. I sense the recurring theme it's about you as an individual. It's about that makes it really complex also to take into account for you, June, and for you, Allison, all of the different individuals that are at your company. How do we then incorporate ideas about that diversity within our workplace and make workplace wellness inclusive? June, do we want to start with you?
Sure. LinkedIn being a global company, it's diverse. Most companies are diverse from different people from different backgrounds, different cultures, and so that is probably one of the most difficult things to do, is to scale a program to a global population without losing the intimacy or that customizable approach. And so one specific program, at least for me, I'm a new dad, and so one program within, this is a benefits and wellness partnership, is the Family First program, or the Parental Journey program at LinkedIn. And this is internal, but our team has created a one-stop shop essentially for new parents, for soon-to-be parents, whether it be adoption and fertility treatments, how to manage your health care, how to manage your paychecks. It's all there, and it really helps that we have a team dedicated to empowering our employees to go there and understand what you can do before you welcome your new one. And so there's a lot of great stuff in there. Career coaching as well is involved with that. And so that specific program, it is for parents and it's a small population, but I felt was one of the most impactful for me at my time at LinkedIn to be able to have it all in front of me with the click of a button. So I think there's a lot of great teams within that are working on that.
Great. Locke, would you like to add?
Sure. I think this is where partnerships, I think, can come into play. For example, at Aura, we're really upping the game for women. We have our own internal cycle tracking tools, but we've also partnered with other external women's health apps, and they've been super successful. So we've really helped women no matter where they are on their reproductive health journey. Some are trying to plan for pregnancy, some are trying to prevent pregnancy, some are new moms, and they're getting back into their cycle rhythm. And so we've partnered with Natural Cycles, Glow, Clue, and Flow, and those have been hugely successful. That's really been a great way to grow our awareness and grow our membership. And so I think that's something that employers can think about is if they're not the expert in a certain area, maybe think about a partner that you could bring in to provide that specific need to your diverse workforce.
Great, thank you. We were all about the power of partnerships here, so that's a great tip. I want to double click on a particular element of wellness that for you, Locke, I know is core to your company's mission. And you also mentioned it, June, and that is the concept of rest, and in particular sleep. And it's really interesting to me because I think there's a lot going on right now, whether it be social media or other content that's being created about this need for rest and this need for sleep. You spoke about it as well, Allison. Why is that so contentious in the West, in the US in particular? It's almost like there's a little bit of a stigma maybe if you feel that you have to disconnect or rest. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as well.
I mean, it is too bad that there is a stigma. And, we have this concept of hustle culture that's ingrained in all of us in the US. I don't really know why, but I do think that we can learn from different cultures. Again, I think we're all global companies. And so one interesting thing that I've learned over the last couple of years at Aura is that we were founded in Finland, so we've gotten to know our Finnish colleagues, and boy, do they know the concept of rest. They are actually so great at taking off time. They all take a month off in the summer, and it's actually illegal to log into your work computer during that time. The company could get in trouble. And then they look at us Americans, and we're, we'll take a 3-day weekend, and we're gonna take a little vacation, and they're like, you guys are crazy. That is not enough time to unplug and truly rest. So I think we may not be able to take a whole month off. If you are, you're lucky and go for it. But I think just taking into consideration how other people are doing it and doing it well is something that we can do. And also from a scientific perspective, I think there's been a lot of discourse lately about different types of rest. Yes, how important it is for sure is being talked about more, and doctors are putting sleep above fitness and above nutrition. But there's a concept called, for example, if you listen to Andrew Huberman's podcast, NSDR, or non-sleep deep rest, and it's also known as yoga nidra. It's actually an ancient practice, and that's a way to get basically the benefits of deep sleep in as little as 10 minutes during the day. Wow. And you kind of listen, it's kind of like a guided meditation, but it goes a little deeper than that. And that has a lot of scientific literature behind it. So I think also just expanding our concept of rest is something we can do. Even if you can't, or if you skimped on sleep one night, maybe take a few moments and do that breath work or do an NSDR practice. There's a lot of things I think you can do.
That's great.
Gain that rest.
Second tip of the day for me. Definitely want to look into that. It's really fascinating to me that there's actually a stigma about rest, because the concept of stigma and wellness is actually broader than that. When you think about mental health in the workplace, definitely your area, there's a tremendous amount of concern and kind of leftover stigma about admitting that you might be struggling with your mental health. I know we've had some great public figures and athletes, Simone Biles, I'm all about the Olympics right now as well, and Naomi Osaka, who I know you guys joined with the podcast, who are trying to raise awareness about that, but I think the stigma still persists, and I'd really love to hear your thoughts, Allison, in particular, about how do we encourage that kind of participation in our wellness programs and overcome some of that stigma?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think, it really starts with leadership teams and managers and anyone who's in a role or position that can influence others. And really that's anyone, right? Anyone in this room can play a role. And so for me, it's kind of going back to the idea of leading with vulnerability. I think we live in this world right now where social media plays a huge, huge role in how we show up, right? When you look at someone's LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, like it's their perfect life, right? No one's showing their hardest, darkest times through their social media. And so we have this idea, this notion that everyone is showing up the best version of themselves. But the reality is everyone struggles. Everyone has their own things that are going on in their personal life that affect their mental health on a daily basis. And when we think about mental health, we think about it on this spectrum from green to yellow to red. And the way that the population breaks down is actually typical bell curve. So about 20% of people are in the green, 60%, most of us are in the yellow, 20% in the red. But it ebbs and flows at different points in our lives. I'm sure many people in this room have felt at times where they're in the red or in the green or they're moving to the yellow depending on what's going on in their life. And so when we think about removing the stigma, it's this idea that we all have mental health. I joke that when I spoke at panels when we started Modern Health 6+ years ago, and I would ask who in the audience has physical health? Well, everyone raises their hand. Who has mental health? People are like, wait, what? It's like, we all have mental health. And so the idea is that it doesn't have to be this stigmatized thing that is viewed as a weakness. We all can proactively engage in our mental health, and it really does start from leading by example, being open about that, being vulnerable about it. It doesn't mean that you have to show up to work and say, I'm struggling with depression and I can't do my job every day. But it's okay to show up and say, hey, I didn't get much sleep last night and it's affecting my ability, or I'm distracted because I'm taking care of a loved one. Can I get back to you tomorrow? So I think a lot of it is leading with vulnerability and leading with empathy for each other, that every single person in this room, and every single person that you all meet with on a daily basis has their own stuff that they're struggling with.
That's a great reminder. Thank you. Great tip for all of us leading teams as well. So June, how do you encourage participation, overcome maybe resistance to some of the wellness work that you're doing?
Well, luckily we don't get a lot of resistance, but it is a challenge to get in front of people. And luckily, we get to present on wellness day one. So new hire orientation, we get to get in front of all of our new hires. We actually just welcomed our class of 200 interns, and so it was really interesting to see the differences between a full-time employee versus an intern. But we get to get in front of them, we get to talk about the program as a whole, but we also understand that, again, everyone's on a different journey, everyone is struggling in a different way, and we are able to share some of our EAP partnerships. We're not with Modern Health. We are with a company called, not yet. We are with a company called Lyra, and they kind of manage our EAP program globally, and they do an incredible job. All employees can get up to 25 complimentary sessions for not only themselves, but their family, their spouse, maybe even their kids as well. And they're even able to dial it into, a specific issue you might be having. You mentioned sleep being a problem, and that's a huge one. A lot of folks are not getting great sleep. When I talk to our engineering cohort in Sunnyvale, they are not sleeping very much. And so, and in order to be your best self, you have to really think about what we like to go back to is those 6 wellness tenets. And it's not always enough. And so having an EAP, an employee assistance program like Lyra, to help support us really helps. And I think helps kind of bring down the level of stigma around it as well. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Conscious of time, but we can't move on from the topic of wellness without talking about stress, right? I mean, that's like the #1 topic. So you're all thought leaders and experts here. What are some tips, kind of lightning round? What else can we put in our toolkit to help alleviate stress or address stress? Allison, start with you.
I wish I had the answer to this. Honestly, I think one of the biggest issues that we're all faced with, I go back to that feeling of constantly connected to technology. And I think so much that we can do is just take a break, take a step away from our computers, our laptops, our cell phones, go for a walk, be in nature. It has such a big impact on your cortisol, on your stress, on just being present. And I know we're all wired to always think about crossing that next thing off our to-do list. I'm the same way, getting to that next milestone. But that's so much of what drives stress in our lives. So I think my biggest tip is really setting aside that time. For me, it's in the morning. I focus on my 18-month-old son, and when I'm with him, I just say, you know what, I'm just gonna put my phone away for this 1 hour that I have in the day with him and go for a walk with him, my dog, my husband. We leave our cell phones at home and just be present. And I think it can play such a huge role in reducing stress. I would be lying if I said I had the silver bullet to completely getting rid of it.
That's a great tip, though. Thanks.
Yeah, I think there's going to be some connective thread here too, because I would say the power of morning sunlight is also really incredible. Just getting outside and viewing morning sunlight is a really scientifically proven way to boost your energy and reduce stress, and also reset your circadian rhythm, helping you sleep better at night. It's really miraculous, actually, and I've been able to do it more so after getting a dog. So similar to you, I do take my dog for a walk, hopefully without the phone attached to me in the morning. And then on days when it's bad weather or whatnot, I would also just recommend having something in the morning to look forward to. I think really sets the tone for a positive day, whether it's a delicious cup of coffee or tea, or just sometimes I just blast music and dance around in the kitchen and just like really boost your energy for the day. So I think just that morning, power of the morning is great.
Thanks. Definitely a theme. I use my dogs to make sure I get out as well.
And maybe just get a dog.
Yeah, get a dog. There you go. June?
Yeah, I mean, within the same line here, I would say breathe, move, and get outside. I think breath is a powerful tool. I often go back to a technique that I use, which is the 4-7-8 technique. 4-second inhale, 7-second hold, 8-second exhale. If you're ever feeling overwhelmed, nervous, what have you, it targets the parasympathetic nervous system by bringing that relaxation into you. And so one tip for everyone here.
Great. I love the breath work. So let's kind of tie up loose ends here, kind of finish this off, even though we've really barely scratched the surface of what we could be talking about here. Back to kind of where wellness has come from. I remember, it's been decades that I've been doing this work, and when we used to think about wellness in the past, the definition was super fuzzy, kind of vague. Wellness programs might look like Weight Watchers in the workplace. Anybody remember that? We'd sponsor Weight Watchers meetings, maybe smoking cessation, and that was kind of it. And I really think this is one of the silver linings from COVID that kind of forced us as humans and as employers to kind of grapple with the idea that we've got to take an active role in promoting wellness in our workplace, whether it's making sure people don't catch the virus or dealing with folks who are struggling with mental health, being isolated at home or having, family members at home that they haven't had to work around before. So I'm really curious as to what's next. You're all in this area, deeply steeped in kind of innovating. What do you think is the future of wellness? What's the next thing that's coming? Allison, I'll start with you.
Oh man, so many ways in which I could go here. I think for me, what's top of mind for me in this moment, so I have an 18-month-old son, I'm a mom, I've got another one on the way, and I think what keeps me up at night, which we really need to solve, is the future of mental health with adolescents. We know that, I think we're gonna look back on social media and think of it as the same as like letting kids smoke cigarettes. Of like, how did we allow for that? What were we thinking? And so I really think there needs to be, social media is not going away overnight, right? So what can we do about it? How can we help support the future generation so that we curb the mental health epidemic? Because while we help solve for mental health by connecting people to therapists or coaches, that's all great and a huge part of the solution, but how can we actually prevent the mental health issues in the first place? And I think a huge part of that is helping create programs and support for parents to support their kids and their adolescents, because behind every struggling child is a caregiver at home that's thinking and spending a lot of time supporting that person, and sometimes being taken out of the workforce to do so. So that's when I think about where we can go. It's really focusing on the future of mental health with adolescents.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, that's major. I think one thing I've been thinking about in terms of the future of wellness is AI, and I know that that's probably on the tips of a lot of people's tongues these days. And I think that is where the wellness industry and companies are going, and I think it's going to be really powerful. It's kind of scary in a lot of ways, but I think the combination of something like biometric data from a wearable, somehow partnering that with the power of AI is going to be awesome. It's going to be personalized. It's going to give you really specific, individualized guidance. It's going to know more about you than you probably ever could have known. Again, it's a little scary for sure, but I do think that AI is going to play a big role in the future of wellness, and hopefully for good.
That's a great segue to our next session. So
Yeah.
thank you very much. June, how about you?
Yeah, no, great points. I think, I just mentioned the interns coming in, 200 new interns.
Wow.
That is the next generation of the workforce coming in. And so seeing them interact seems very different from the way we used to probably interact. I think that the future is going to be really focused around social wellness. I think social wellness, rebuilding connections and relationships within the workplace. I think employers are going to really need to invest in that as well. And I think, Modern Health, I think Aura play a huge role in that as well. But I think social wellness, reconnecting with folks, the on-site presence makes a big difference of building those relationships. Every day, right now, as we speak, there are probably 150 interns playing pickleball, basketball in the gyms, or doing a yoga class, and they're eating it all up. And so I think, again, rebuilding those relationships and reconnecting with folks.
That's great. Thank you all so much. I know we're, again, barely scratched the surface. Hopefully you've gotten a couple of tips to add to your toolkit. Hopefully we sparked your interest in the concept of wellness a little bit. Again, these folks are thought leaders, prolific writers. Connect with them on LinkedIn, follow them, you'll get a lot more information. And I just want to thank the three of you so much for being great partners.
Thank you.
Be well,
Thank you.
everyone.